In the name I am that I am, son of tomorrow, I call forth the light of the living word, beloved Elohim, beloved archangels, beloved mighty choans of the rays and the lords of karma. I call for the action of beloved Pallas Athena, beloved goddess of liberty, beloved Nada, beloved Kuan Yin, beloved Portia, beloved great divine director, beloved all-seeing eye of God, Cyclopeia. Let God's will be done, let God's will be done, let God's will be done. I demand the action of the sacred fire in this hour. Descend out, mighty cosmos, secret rays. I am the holding of the balance of Lord Gautama Buddha, beloved Sana Kumara and the seven holy Kumaras. I call upon the sacred fire, I call upon the light of God that never fails. Beloved mighty, I am present, come forth in this hour of the victory. Come forth in this hour of the victory of the God flame. I demand the full power, beloved mighty, exceeding with us this night. Beloved Jesus, send to me, Lord, my Savior, Gautama and Son of Kumara. Come, Lord, now in the victory of the God flame. Send to light 10,000 suns. Beloved mighty, stand, mighty, stand, mighty, stand. Around this fortune now. I call upon the great symbols and magnets. I call upon the light of God that never fails. Beloved is there, beloved is there, beloved is there. I call upon the electronic soul, the rings of the great central sun, the cell of light God. I call for the electronic fire rings. I call for the rings of the great central sun.
Good afternoon and welcome to yet another edition, the holiday edition, the abridged holiday edition of Navigating the Astrological Matrix. I'm Robert Phoenix, and I'll be here for 60 minutes today, not the normal 120 minutes, because it's a holiday or close to it, and I have to get ready, I guess, in some ways for the holiday. I have a lot of work to do. I've been extremely busy on the reading front over the last few days, which is good for me because it's how I make my living to a large extent. And it's good because people are engaged in trying to understand what's going on in their lives and in the world around them. It's been a pretty powerful time in terms of doing the readings. So I encourage you, if you don't get a chance, to have a free reading today, to look me up on my website, robertphoenix.com, which I'm about to update, excuse me, and book a reading. And I have holiday specials on there too for friends. If you want to do a 2-for-1, or there's a lot of different sort of goodies on my website which you can grab and set something up. I don't often brag. My father taught me not to brag. I find it rather unseemly. But again, I am a Virgo, so that would probably enter into it somewhere. But I do have to tout, maybe touting is better than bragging, a prediction that I made, and that did not take place on my website. It actually took place in a forum, football forum that I'm on, and it has to do with the current quarterback controversy / situation with the San Francisco 49ers. And it has to do with Colin Kaepernick and Alex Smith. And in some ways, this is really the testament to mundane astrology and just how powerful it can be. And somebody asked me, well, why did you get into astrology? And the reason was because of the number of correspondences that I could see. It was uncanny. So I'll share this with you as more of a testament to how astrology can work and does work, and not so much as a testament of my ability to predict the future, although that does come into it to some extent. So let me set the stage for you. Here we are. It's Saturn in Scorpio. Mercury is in Sagittarius, and the Mars was in Sagittarius. And this was 2 weeks ago, and Mars is at 25 degrees Sagittarius. And there's a player that plays for the San Francisco 49ers named Colin Kaepernick, who was born on November 3rd, and I think the year was 1987. I think it's 87. Anyway, so he's a Scorpio, and his Scorpio, I think, is at 8 or 9 degrees, and he has Uranus in Sagittarius at 25 degrees in his chart. And it was a couple of weeks ago, even before the game I'm about to tell you about, where I looked at his chart, and then I looked at the other quarterback, Alex Smith, and I looked at his chart. And what we can see right now is the position of the moon's nodes, which we're going to talk about today as it relates to the state of Israel and what's going on with the Israeli chart. So the moon's nodes are in Scorpio and Taurus. And so the north node is in Scorpio and the south node is in Taurus. And we know that the dominant node is the north node and the recessive node is the south node. So I predicted that in the middle of November that Alex Smith would get hurt. Alex Smith is a Taurus, by the way. So we have a classic example here of an opposition between two quarterbacks, which is Colin Kaepernick, Scorpio, and Alex Smith, Taurus. And I saw that Kaepernick was rising, that with Saturn, that with the true node, that there's no way that this guy could remain as Alex Smith's backup. So I predicted that Alex Smith would get hurt, Colin Kaepernick would take over, and he would not let go of the starting job. So let's go back in time Monday night. San Francisco is playing the Chicago Bears. Colin Kaepernick came into play the week before that against the Rams when Alex Smith suffered a concussion. In fact, 3 NFL players suffered concussions during that weekend. Michael Vick, Jay Cutler, Alex Smith, Taurus, Aries. So we're talking, head or close to the head. Uranus and Aries right now, which is why concussions are such a big deal in pro football. So then he came in on this Sunday, not last Sunday, but the Sunday before last, when Mars was at 25 degrees Sagittarius, conjuncting his natal Uranus exactly. So it's sudden. Came in right at the drop of a hat. So people were afraid that Alex Smith was not going to play on Monday night because they thought he was the best chance against the big bad Bears defense, one of the best defenses in pro football. They lead the league in takeaways and turnovers, and teams can't run the ball. And these guys are the monsters of the midway. They're the badasses, right? They're the big bad Bears. You don't want to put Colin Kaepernick up against the big bad Bears. It's his first full game, Monday Night Football, bright lights, big city. There it is. Well, I predicted that Colin Kaepernick would not only do extremely well, because Scorpios rise to the occasion. They do not flinch from the moment. They thrive on pressure. They thrive on it. So I knew he was going to do well. Then the moon was in Aquarius, so I targeted Randy Moss and Vernon Davis, both Aquarians who play for San Francisco. And Moss started out playing well, but he dislocated his finger. And then Vernon Davis did extremely well and he scored a touchdown. So I targeted both of them, and I predicted the score would be right around 30. It turned out to be 32 for the 49ers. And I actually thought that the Bears would score more. I said 17, and they wound up scoring 7. So my original prediction was 30-17. It was 32-7. Very close. But what I'm trying to illustrate here is that we can begin to navigate our reality based on the timing of these aspects. And it was pretty clear to me, and it's only because I understand this language that I was able to begin to elucidate that and articulate that, which I did on this website, which is kind of fun. But anyway, how it relates to Israel right now as we shift from the mundane world of the National Football League. By the way, Colin Kaepernick is going to be a star. As we shift from the National Football League from the NFL to the IDF, I'm looking at Israel's chart. And Israel's chart is an interesting chart. Now, you have to understand that charts for countries or cities are not done willy-nilly. And if they are done willy-nilly, then the city planners or the state planners aren't really planning. And what they do is they will incorporate, or they will sign a charter, or they will sign some form of constitution at a specific time. Now, you have to understand that they didn't just pluck this time out of the air when they did the chart, when Israel signed its constitution, because the Israel, especially the people that are currently running Israel, are absolutely steeped in esoterica, and steeped in, like if you go to the Knesset right now, you'll see that the Knesset is essentially a Freemasonic temple. It's very, very intense what the Knesset looks like. It's got obelisks, it's got pyramids, it's got all-seeing eyes. It is really a trip. Okay, it has nothing to do really with the frontispiece of Judaism. It's something behind the scenes. And what we're talking about here is we're talking about the roots of Kabbalistic symbolism and imagery, which really evolved out of Babylon and eventually migrate to Israel. And we're talking about kind of modern day, as it exists now, esoterica and occult, which is playing a huge role, by the way. I found out there are these three guys. You can go to Facebook and look at my latest Facebook post. They found these three guys in California, one of which I believe might be from the Middle East, and the other two guys are like Hispanic. And they were just arrested for some kind of a terror plot. And on the link that I found, there was a whole story about them. And there were three guys who were talking about how they were their neighbors. And one of the guys is a young man, boy, and he's wearing a shirt called Sharp Knives, Loud Guns. And this is a company started by two guys from New York City called DeVille, which is short for devil, right? And they had a tattoo parlor, and they were doing tattoos, and they branched off of their designs into clothing, and Sharp Knives, Loud Guns is part of their brand. And this kid was wearing this shirt, which was kind of fascinating. It was the Freemasonic compass and square, but it was the compass, and then the square were two revolvers, two like Colt revolvers from the Wild West, and they were set at the angle of the square. And then it had and then inside that had black sun imagery, and then inside the black sun there was some faux kind of Sanskrit sort of calligraphy, and I have not been able to find out what it is, because that's why I think it's faux. I think they're playing with it. And so this is what this kid is wearing, the shirt. So I looked into DeVille or Devil, and part of the ownership, one half of it, is started by this guy named AMI James, who is the son of a guy who converted to Judaism and then who went to Israel to go fight in the IDF and abandoned his son at the age of 4. And his son eventually went into the IDF and became a sniper. So this is one half of this company. So what we're talking about here is we're talking about the sort of the high priests of the Solomonic priestcraft, or the priesthood, which goes all the way back to like the Sanhedrin and all those characters, right? So we're talking, and this is the modern day esoteric language that we talk has really evolved out of this. It's evolved out of the Kabbalah, and even modern day astrology, has some of its roots in Babylon and the Solomonic priestcraft. So when I say that Israel just did not find a date willy-nilly, no, they were very clear about the day they wanted to become the nation state of Israel. And when we look at their chart, the angles, the ascendant, the descendant, the IC, and the MC are all fixed. They're all fixed. And especially at the ascendant and the descendant, they're fixed at 0 degrees. I mean, it doesn't get more fixed than that. You're dealing with the most fundamental, the most pure, undiluted expression of Scorpio and Taurus Now, so Israel is a Scorpio rising, and not only that, but it has Moon, Uranus, Saturn, and Mars all in the sign of Leo. Again, fixed signs. So fixed signs play a big role in this. Sun in Taurus, true node in Taurus. So Israel is on the descent. When the south node of the moon hits Israel's south node at 14 degrees, which will happen in 2013, then there will be a vulnerability in terms of the relationships that Israel has courted with other countries. Because what's happening is that it is with Saturn in the first house, it is doing everything to assert its will with Saturn in Scorpio. The true node, which is going backwards, right? So it's just now in the first house and moving towards its ascendant. Now, if I'm not mistaken, that there will be a time where the true node hits its ascendant, and that moment in time would be, in some ways, I wouldn't say call it a special moment, but a destined moment or a predestined moment for Israel to achieve its sort of original destiny. And it's almost like it would be kind of hardwired into the DNA of the chart at the time that it was cast, almost like an alarm going off. And when we look at let's go into the ephemeris and find out when that is, since we need to always be as exact as possible. My good friend Raku, the cosmophysician, he is the man when it comes to being exact. So let me honor him here and go find this. There's other aspects going on too, which we're going to talk about, which are fascinating as it relates to the peace process of Israel and the elongation of the peace process. And there's a reason for that. And we're going to get into that, and you can see it quite clearly in the chart. So let's go here, and let's go into, let's see, so the moon, some nodes, about 18 months. So let's go to 2014. And sure enough, we're talking 0 degrees, 2014. So that's going to be in March of 2014. And what's interesting about that time also is that Israel has Venus in Libra. And that's at 10 degrees. So Mars will be moving backwards into Israel's 12th house, which is, Israel has Neptune, my bad, Neptune in Libra in the 12th house. And that, again, that plays a huge role in the peace process, in the elongation therein. So this is an interesting time because, Mars in the 12th house is very agitated. It's an agitated place for Mars to be. In the old school, they would say hidden enemies. That would be the fated meaning of Mars in the 12th house. And there still is some truth to that. But when Mars so we just came through a Mars and Libra period. And that was coming out of the very long Mars and Virgo. So we've seen this before. Every time Mars goes through Israel's 12th house, there would be some kind of perturbation and some form of unsettling or rumbling at a deep level inside their culture. And I believe when Mars was going through their 12th house, one of the things that was taking place was there was a lot of strikes. There were people that were protesting quite a bit during that time. So that would be something along those lines. So as Israel moves into this moment with 0 degrees on the node of the moon, that is really when there is for them a moment in time that would be kind of life or death, to be honest with you. You know, it would either be to transform the nature and the identity of who they are and what they are as a country, or that paradigm would be threatened, because Scorpio is very intense, and we're dealing with angles, very sharp angles. You know, not only does the ascendant at 0 degrees oppose the descendant at 0 degrees, but it squares the midheaven at 3 degrees in Leo and 3 degrees in Aquarius down in the Imimcelli. So this is a very, very tense and intense time for this country. And you know, one of the other challenges is not just the movements of the nodes, because at 14 degrees, when the moon's south node touches Israel's true node or north node, that is going to be challenging in and of itself. And that's in 2013. That's going to be a very challenging aspect for them, because it feels to me like with that aspect, their friends, quote unquote, are going to leave and abandon them. So this could also relate to their best friend, their biggest buddy in the world, the United States. And there's a reason for that, by the way. Israel has Venus in Cancer at 4 degrees. And of course, what is the United States? The United States is a Cancer. So there's a very strong connection between Israel and the United States with the Venus Cancer and Sun Cancer. And also because, Venus is in the 9th house. So it's about relationships with countries further away from them than their neighbors. And their neighbors, by the way, are having a challenge with them because of an expansionist philosophy in terms of geopolitics and land and resources. And why is that? Because they have Jupiter in Sagittarius, where in the 2nd house. What does Jupiter want to do? Sagittarius, expand. What is the 2nd house? It's ruled by Taurus. What is Taurus? It is earth. It is land. So it's about expansion. And clearly this is a big part of the dilemma, is the expanding territories. And we have here Uranus, very tricky 8th house with Mercury in Gemini, Uranus in Gemini, Uranus opposing Jupiter, and it's in the 8th house, so the motivations are not clear. And, what happens? There are these missiles, these bombs, some of which might be real, some of which might be planted, some of which, are, for lack of a better term, false flags. I mean, these things are going on. The governments of the world will do anything to move the needle and move their agenda along. Trust me, they will. Okay, so what we have here is we have the motivation with Uranus opposing Jupiter, which is uneasy. Uranus in the 8th house is restless. In Gemini, it's very restless. And when we have Mercury in Gemini, it's very secretive at the same time. Now, Mercury in the chart actually trines Neptune. So, but what happens here is when the trines happen between two water houses, motivation is never revealed. It's sort of like it goes from one deep source through an aqueduct buried beneath the surface, and it comes up in another deep source, not as deep as the other deep source, but still, nonetheless. So the whole intellectual it is not a transparent place. It is not a transparent place. And Mercury in Gemini is able to say two things at the same time and have them both appear to be equally true. This is the challenge. Now, what's happening is that Jupiter is retrograde in Gemini, right? And it is doing this retrograde motion in Israel's 8th house. So what's happening? You go to Facebook right now, and you'll find people on Facebook that are openly criticizing Israel in a way that I've never seen before, to be honest with you. I've not seen it. I had a brief exchange with my friend Richard Horowitz, brilliant musician, and spent a lot of time in the Middle East. He is a master at klezmer music and all kinds of Middle Eastern modalities. He did the soundtrack for The Sheltering Sky, the Paul Bowles movie. His longtime companion is the amazing and wonderful Susan Dahim. So I just had a brief email exchange for Richard because Richard has been saying, "Hey, this is bullshit. We can't allow these guys to just go in and slaughter these people." And Richard happens to be Jewish. And what we're seeing here now is we're seeing the conscience of the American Jewish community start to awaken. And thank God, it's about time that this is taking place. And I've always been of the mind that any culture, any religion that's worth its salt has to be able to self-reflect. And if it can't self-reflect, then it can't find out where it's weak or where it's vulnerable and where it needs to change. And one of the things that I have found over time is unlike almost any other religion or country or culture, that because of the way that people are raised within the culture, it's very hard for people of the Jewish faith to self-reflect. Very hard. There's a ton of guilt, but it's also very hard. But we're seeing that change. That's shifting. Another good friend of mine, Lawrence Holtberg, from upstate New York, has been very vocal and has really come right out against this wanton violence we're seeing in the Middle East, in Gaza specifically. So there's a shift in terms of consciousness, and this is why the moon's nodes are having a large role to play. And when the moon's node is at 23 degrees, and we're getting very close to that right now. So from 2013, at 23 degrees, that's January. Okay, so January, the true node is going to be opposite. The north node is going to be opposite the Israeli sun at 23 degrees. And at that time, the south node, the lunar node, will be right on Israel's sun. And what we're going to see in the first part of the year is a real split and a real schism in terms of support for Israel because of its identity versus its actions and its outward reach into the world, and because Scorpio is an incredibly defensive sign in a lot of ways. And we talked about this on the Monday show with Darren Williams. We're talking about Paula Broadwell and Petraeus, both of whom are Scorpios. And, we talked about the defensive nature of Scorpio. And who was it? Chuck Norris said the best defense is a good offense. So Scorpios take that to heart, and that's their rule of law. So with 0 degree Scorpio in the ascendant, the best way to be defensive is to go after people and to keep them on the defensive. But that's going to change because it's going to be accentuated both with Saturn and the true node, north node in the first house, but with the lunar node on its sun. And then later on, when we get to when we get to July, it's going to be very different. At that point, Saturn will still be at 4 degrees, so it'll just be off of its ascendant. But the true node then, at that point, is right on Israel's north node. So it's going to be so that's where the moment of this is funny, right? So the south node or the recessive node is now in Israel's first house, but the true node, the north node, is in its seventh house. So when we have the south node transiting on top of its true node or north node in the seventh house, then what do we have? We have revelation. We have revelation, and right now, if anything, the best course of action for them would be to make peace. I'm sorry. Because you want, if your hand is not strong, and it's not strong with the south node in its first house, you want to be able to go to the seventh house. You want to be able to help out that recessive node. So the key would be to make peace, but unfortunately, that's not what we're seeing. So again, with Saturn, squaring the midheaven, and there is this notion too that with all those planets in Leo up in the 10th house, that that Israel is very convinced of itself that it has a royal or kingly relationship to all things, because that's what Leo is. And again, it's all fixed signs, all fixed planets. So when Saturn comes in at 4 degrees, which is right around the time I'm talking to you about, so again, 2013, it's almost there now. Saturn's at 3 degrees now. It will hit 4 degrees, and it's going to square the Israeli moon up in the 10th house, which is just 1 degree off of its midheaven. It's a very precarious time in that country, in that part of the world, trust me. Very, very precarious. So I think we all, what do we want to do? I mean, so I think we want people to live in peace on this planet. I know I do. I know I absolutely do. So I guess to the best of our abilities, we need to be able to radiate peace in our own lives in order for that to happen. And that is a constant journey towards the one. Speaking of the one, last night I was hanging out in my apartment, and I kept hearing the sound of a helicopter going over my apartment. And I'm wondering, what the hell is that? So I go outside and I look. There's a helicopter in the sky, like doing donuts, right around my apartment. And I talked to a woman downstairs. I talked to her from my balcony. I'm up on the 3rd floor. And I asked her, what's going on out there? She said, I don't know. There's lots of cops out by the front of the apartment building. So I'm like, wow, okay. Well, that's a little weird. So, first of all, I don't like to be disturbed like that. And second of all, I'm a tad paranoid. So I decided, hey, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get a sundae at the Sonic. So I get in my car and I drive out the back gate of my apartment complex. And on the left side of the exit, there's a field and a fence. And in that field, I can see through the fence, there was a squad car with lights on. And it's like, wow, they're on the perimeter over there. And then I go through the back gate and I go down this road, and there's like 5 cars at about, I don't know, maybe 1,000 feet intervals, 5 cop cars, all with their lights on. They had literally cordoned off the entire area. There was a massive manhunt going on. They were looking for the one. There was a massive manhunt going on in my apartment complex last night. It was a little strange, a little unnerving. I didn't come back until I finished my Sunday at the Sonic. Okay, I have about a half an hour here, and we got a lunar eclipse coming up, and that's at the end of the month. That should be very interesting. Very, very interesting. Trust me on this. It'll be taking place, by the way, in Israel's, let's see, it'll be full moon 8th house. 8th house. Lunar eclipse in Israel's 8th house. Illumination. All right, somebody from Austin, I wonder if this is Dave, is on the line. Let's see who they are and what they want to talk about. Hello there. Hello. Are you just listening? Okay, let's keep that. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to open up the phone lines. If you want a quick reading, 347-308-8995, 347-308-8995. We've got about 25 minutes left in the show, and we can jump in on that and give you guys some free readings until 1 o'clock. And if not, I'll just continue to yammer about astrology. On Friday, I'm going to have 2 guests on. I'm going to have Donna Faber. And Donna is a friend of mine. She's an artist, and she's a terrific artist. And she has a line of cards, holiday cards, and all kinds of greeting cards that she produces. And I'm going to talk to Donna about really the way of the artist. And because a lot of times what we do is we dissect, we deconstruct, we're looking for, clues as to what's going on in the matrix. And a lot of times what we lose touch with is creativity and artistry and imagination. And these are things that are really important in that they help us not only create, but recreate the world that we live in. And this is a time where we have so many tools at our disposal through digital media that we can really crank up the creativity factor. I'm also going to have Patrick Ivy on, and Patrick is a subscriber to my newsletter, and he's also deeply involved in the sovereign movements here in this country, and not just this country, but the world, and people trying to figure out how to be free on a legal level. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, because that's Patrick's expertise. He's quite good at it. He's got a great mind. But we're also going to talk about money and finances and where this is all headed. And Patrick, again, is really sharp and has his telescope on the fiscal cliff. And one of the things that we had an exchange about over email in the last couple of days, because he responded to some news that actually Dave and Austin had shared with me about the new bills being in. And he has a friend who works at a printer, and he said that there has not been any printing jobs for currency, the current currency that we have, for 2 years. So they have literally, at some level, stopped making the dollars that we use, which means that there's probably a new currency that is about to be circulated. And so Patrick and I, we're going to get into that a little bit, and we're going to talk about especially how there's a huge movement right now into hard assets, hard metals. And when the big boys move into hard metals, you better pay attention. Hard assets, you better pay attention, because they're moving the needle, and they are changing the game. What we saw over the course of probably the last 2 months has been massive sell-offs in the marketplace. Huge sell-offs. In fact, Apple had a huge sell-off too just last week. And so what are those guys doing? Well, they're turning that money into the acquisition of hard assets, gold, silver, platinum, all that good stuff. So that's what's going on right now. So we'll talk to Patrick about that shift as well at a high level, and we'll get into the currency game a little bit and get some insight. So that should be a pretty good show. If you're interested in art, if you're interested in creativity, if you're interested in really trying to find a way to make a living as an artist, we'll talk to Donna about that and how she's created her life as an artist. And then we're going to talk about getting outside the system and what it takes and how money is evolving both inside and outside the system. That's going to be Patrick. It should be a really, really good show. Okay, 20 minutes left. Come on, people. If you want a reading, I'm here for you. The window is open, literally and figuratively. I've been on a reading roll for the past 7 days. Mars in Capricorn. I wanted to talk about Mars in Capricorn a little bit. We have Mars in Capricorn right now, and Mars is exalted in Capricorn. And everybody that I've ever known that has Mars in Capricorn work extremely hard. But the thing about them is that you don't get a sense that they're working hard. It's fascinating to watch. Like people that have Mars in Virgo, you know they're working hard. You know they're working hard. They let you know, too, that they're working hard, by the way. But Mars in Capricorn people, they get stuff done. I've always been amazed at how much people that have Mars in Capricorn can get done. They also have a unique ability to convince people that they have leadership qualities. And the reason why they're able to convince people of that is because of their pronounced workload. But it's not just the pronounced workload that they can handle and take on, but it's also their ability to delegate and run things. You know, if I were starting a business and I wanted somebody to be a project manager or a manager in general, I would find somebody who has Mars in Capricorn. Absolutely, 100%. Although people that have Mars in Capricorn can be very ambitious. So I'd want to keep my eye on that person too, just to make sure they're not coming after my job. But Mars in Capricorn, we're here now. And it's an interesting time to have Mars in Capricorn. It's in mutual reception with Saturn in Scorpio. And the Saturn in Scorpio piece is fascinating too, because, we're dealing with the potential of a Black Friday with Walmart with their workers on strike, which would be kind of a Saturn in Scorpio experience. It's all about pressure and intensity and contracting, but it would have a big hit on the marketplace. It would have a huge hit on the marketplace. And one of the things, I got into this with somebody, we were talking about, when the shit hits the fan. Like, when is the shit going to hit the fan? And I've always said that if you get up to the holidays, it almost has to be after the holidays, because so many companies are making a lot of money hand over fist, even though people are broke, they're spending on their credit cards to buy presents. But if there is a Walmart strike and there's a Black Friday, and if Black Friday is really just a hollow, empty void, and I hate Black Friday, by the way, it's a ritual, is what it is. If that's the case, then it'll be interesting to see what happens with the consensual reality and above and beyond and after Black Friday. I think somebody wants a reading. Let's jump into this. Hello there.
Hey, Robert. This is Eric.
Oh, hey, Eric. What's going on, man?
I just was curious maybe if you might be able to give me an update on a couple things.
Okay.
Actually, one thing I was doing last night is I was taking another look at my natal chart,
mm-hmm.
and I noticed one version of it, it has Chiron connected somewhere, and I'm not really sure how all the rays and crosses and all that get arrived at, but on one of them it had something from Chiron, and the other one it didn't. So I was kind of curious your opinion about the significance of Chiron on a natal chart.
I'm a big Chiron guy, and the reason why. So what happens is that when you create a chart, there will be opt-ins and options, right? And if you don't mark Chiron as an option, it won't show up in the chart. So it doesn't automatically show up. The same with things like asteroids. Unless you specifically indicate that certain asteroids are going to be part of that chart, they don't normally show up. So I'm pulling up your chart right now, and I'm going there. And these charts on AstroDeans always have Chiron. They factor Chiron in without you opting in. So that tells you, what one of the most important and visited websites on the internet says about Chiron. It's an automatic opt-in for them. So I'm with them on the automatic opt-in. And for me, Chiron is always about Chiron for me is about socialization and how when we're young, we go through a period where, we wind up getting taken away from sort of our purity of intent, our purity of our expression, and society begins to seep in. And Chiron is that vulnerable place where we are being told by some societal institution that this isn't right, or you need to put this back in the box for whatever reason. It can be with school, it can be with religion, it can be with your parents, it can be with your peer group. It can be all of those, or maybe one or just two of those. So what we have to do with Chiron is we have to wrestle with how we deal with shame and embarrassment, and society saying, you can't do this, or you shouldn't do this. And so how this works is that in the individual chart, when we were born and that template is created, the template of time is created, and Chiron shows up in a specific place, that is your Chironic challenge. And you get to deal with that and find through the wounded application of Chiron, or the application of the wounded healer in Chiron, find that piece inside of you that is uncomfortable. And then you get to extract it and then begin a journey towards wholeness with Chiron. I think it's a vitally important aspect. And when I look at your Chiron, you have it in the 7th house. And that's the house of relationship. So for you, your Chironic moment, or your Chironic moments would show up when you are engaged in a one-on-one relationship with someone. And that would be where your vulnerability would come into play. And that's where you would be tested in many ways. Now, in your chart, you have an opposition between, looks like, Mercury. Now, it's Mercury and Jupiter, but also Uranus and Chiron, right? That's your opposition, yeah. And Mercury also opposes Chiron. So you've got that opposition. It's almost like a yod, finger of God. It's a very important part of your chart. So, what you have there is in the 2nd house, you would have Mercury in Libra, Pluto in Libra, Uranus in Libra. What does Libra like to do? Libra really likes to get along. Libra doesn't like to create waves. Libra is all about harmony. And Chiron and Aries and Jupiter in Aries, it's a very different vibe. They're about, expressing. And so the conflict here would be with the 2nd house because of, I'm sorry, you know what, I've messed up, man. Your Chiron's in the 8th house. I apologize. Your Chiron would be, at that point, it would still impact your relationships because of the sign of Libra, but it's actually at a much deeper level because it's in the 8th house. So your challenge would be, do you want to just kind of get along, with people and make things cool and, especially in a relationship, be copacetic and not make any waves? Or do you want to get into this gnawing place in your subconscious, which tells you that things aren't right? And that's where Chiron is for you. You've got to go into that Chironic place in Aries to follow the impulse, which the impulse there is self-actualization. And it's self-actualization through Aries, which is the self, and Jupiter, which is expansion. So, we kind of what I teach is if you want to go to that place where you have your greatest gift in the chart, not the place where you're supposed to go in terms of actualizing who you are, which is the true node, but the greatest gift, which is Jupiter, then for you it's in Aries and it's in the 8th house. And for you it's a journey into the psyche, and it's all about understanding and being able to tap into other people's resources and trusting yourself. There's a big element of trusting yourself with Chiron and Aries in the 8th house, and being able to trust your instincts, being able to trust your intuition, your hunches. But the challenge is sometimes with the opposition, because Mercury in Libra is all about balance and weighing decisions, right? Well, should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do this? Should I do that? And Aries is not about that at all. Aries is just do it, do it, do it, do it, do it. And it's a big part of your chart. It's a big part of your chart, which is, again, the socially acceptable thing to do would be to go to the opposite of Chiron, which would be Libra, and be polite and be courteous. And then the sort of the unsocially acceptable thing to do would be to get into that 8th house and just say, no, it's not like this. It doesn't work like this. This is what I'm going to do. And, and if you don't like it, well, that's your problem. And then what happens, though, is your Chiron is really engaged in a fascinating, kind of ballet in this, this grand square, and this, it's intense, this grand square between Chiron and the moon, and Chiron opposing Aquarius, Chiron squaring Saturn, Saturn squaring Uranus. I mean, dude, this is a life work. This is not a weekend seminar, you've chalked off here. So ultimately, what we're doing here is and you can get into Chiron at any point in the grand square. You can get into it through Uranus. You can get into it through Saturn. You can get into it through the Moon. Any one of those points, you can get into it through Mercury. Any one of those points can activate your Chiron.
What do you mean by getting into it through these planets?
Because if you have a transit, right? So if you have, let's say in 2013 when Jupiter crosses your Saturn in Cancer, one of the things it's going to do, it's going to square your Chiron, because the 8th house is one of those houses that's not always the easiest to uncover and reveal. It takes work to get into the 8th house. That's why the 8th house is connected to psychotherapy and psychology, because you need to have like a shaman or a guide take you into the 8th house to uncover your complexes, your obsessions. Anybody who wants to take a journey into the 8th house, if you've got planets there, it's really good to work with somebody else to reflect, how to get there and how to uncover and untangle the treasure that's in the 8th house. So how do you get there? You get there through the angles. You get there through the Moon. If something is transiting on the Moon, like for instance, anytime there'd be like a full moon or a new moon in Capricorn, that would actually impact your Chiron. So you would look at the months of January and the months of June, because that's when the new and the full moon would occur in the sign of Capricorn. So that would, those would be Chironic moments for you.
What about eclipses that involve the moon?
An eclipse? It would depend on the sign. What's like this upcoming eclipse?
Yeah.
The upcoming eclipse is let's see. So that's a full. So that would be actually in Gemini, if I'm not mistaken. That would be more of a sympathetic angle towards your Chiron, because the eclipse happens on the 28th. So I wouldn't necessarily think that would be the case, although that eclipse will have a powerful impact on your midheaven. I'll tell you that right now. It'll have a very strong impact on your midheaven in terms of your career and work. And I think that was
actually the next thing I was going to ask you about, was my career.
Well, you've got Jupiter up there, and Jupiter is moving backwards. Actually, it's past your Mars already. So it's going to be moving forwards. And once it reconnects with your Mars, and that'll be in 2013, then so it's moving back towards your midheaven. I think Jupiter gets to 6 degrees. And it opposes, it's kind of tricky. You've got a lot of oppositions in your chart, but it opposes, in this instance, Neptune down in your in the Deer in the 4th house. So the Jupiter-Neptune opposition generally is one of optimism and a feeling of I can do this. And you have to be a little careful because of that, because you don't want to overreach your mark. But there's more optimism and more confidence in your life during that opposition. What I like about Jupiter coming back onto your Mars is that it's going to be trining your Mercury in Libra. When it hits your midheaven, it's going to be trining your Pluto in the 2nd house. So let's just go into the ephemeris and find out when that is, because that's actually a pretty interesting moment in time for you. Let's see. So we want to go to Jupiter at 6 degrees. That happens on the 11th of February, and it's retrograde. And it goes direct on the 30th and 31st. So right around the 1st of February, I think is a really good time for you. And Sun is in Aquarius, so there's some mutual receptivity. Look where the Moon is. The Moon is in Libra at that time. So you're going to get the nice flow of Jupiter right on your Mars. Your midheaven, and then headed towards your Mars. So really that time, it should be, if you wanted to, Eric, that would be a time where you could set off on a new path. Or you could branch off and do something different while you're still doing your same thing, because that's really what Gemini is about, right? It's about double tracking, and you've got Gemini on your midheaven, so you could do two things at once. You know, some people can't, but you could. You could handle that. So
you alluded to a lot of crosses in my chart. Is that even more than a grand cross would typically have?
Well, I would say the angles. Well, yes. That's because you have the yod, which is that split between Mercury and Uranus. So I would say yes, you do. And then you've also got that opposition, which goes right through the Grand Cross, right in the middle of the chart, right? Between Neptune and Mars, which is what we're just talking about. Mm-hmm. So I would say yes, you do have more. Like I did a reading for a guy last night that had typical four, the four angles of the Grand Cross. So he had that, the Grand Square. So, but you have more. You decided to have the what was that game, the Spirotot, when you had that little thing with the geometry when you were a kid. Remember that? You probably
I think I was talking about the spirograph or something.
Yeah, spirograph. That's a spirograph. You decided to have the spirograph astrological life. So you will never be bored. You will never be bored. I was telling this fellow last night that, one of the things that he did when he came into this lifetime is he clearly said, yeah, I'll go back, but I don't want to be bored this time. And I think that that's even more so, with your chart. And the thing too is, you've got Mars trining Pluto, Mars trining at Mercury. Dude, I mean, you have tenacity. You have a lot of tenacity. You're not one to be easily knocked off course once you find your course. You have tremendous staying power. So even though you set up some challenges with the chart, it's not like you're not without resources, internal resources, which you have in abundance, for sure.
Because I was looking at all these commentaries about Grand Crosses and everything, and they all seem very sympathetic and negative. And I was like, well, there's got to be something positive here. But your evaluation has been positive, but it's like I couldn't quite reconcile all this general, attitude.
Well, the thing too is like if you are ambitious and you want to cover a lot of ground in one lifetime, and you want to burn, quote unquote, burn a lot of karma or go through a lot of experiences and grow, why wouldn't you have a Grand Cross? I mean, I think incarnating with a Grand Cross takes a lot of courage, to be honest with you. As a soul, you said, bring it on, man. Bring it on. I'm going to do this. So, when I was in my 20s, astrology was not where it's at today. Astrology, when I was in my 20s, was still back in like the 1940s in terms of 30s, in terms of its attitudes. And I would tell people, how old are you going to be? They'd ask me, how old are you going to be this year? Oh, 28. Oh, you're going to go through your Saturn. You're going to go through your Saturn return. Oh, boy, just wait. I'm like, are you kidding me? So I had all this front-loaded negative messaging about my Saturn return. And so by the time I got to my Saturn return, man, I was like quaking in my fucking boots. So it wasn't really that cool for me to experience. Look, are people's Saturn returns challenging? Yeah, sure, they can be really challenging. That's why they're there. But I did not have the luxury of people telling me that, hey, listen, man, you get into this, you'll do extremely well. But you've got to really put your nose to the grindstone and work on it and work through it. Nobody told me that. And I'm not blaming the people that didn't tell me that. But if I had known, I'd been so hyped up by the fear of the Saturn return that I couldn't get into the real positive and potential of the Saturn return. So I guess why I'm sharing that with you is that, yeah, a Grand Cross is a heavy thing. But look, man, you incarnated. You said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to bring this on. This is my life. And I'm going to learn and grow. I'm not going to be bored. And by the way, I'm going to bring some resources in, which you do have. So you're not alone on this.
And I haven't felt that way. I haven't felt this heavy. I mean, there's a weightiness, but it's not a negativity. I haven't felt this negativity that people seem to express about it.
Good. You shouldn't. You shouldn't, because at the end of the day, you could be quite successful with a Grand Cross and have a lot of accomplishment, a lot of achievement, but more importantly, you'll have accomplished your soul's work, which is what you signed up for in this lifetime.
Well, Robert, I always appreciate your perspective. I don't know anybody who's given something that is incisive as yours on astrology or a lot of even your political commentary. So keep it up, man.
Thank you, Eric. And listen in on Friday's show. I think you'll find it interesting.
I will do.
All right. Take good care. Happy Thanksgiving.
All right, you too.
All right. See you.
Bye-bye.
If you're listening to this show now, you're now listening to the archived and podcasted version of it. And unfortunately, I did not get to you on live Blog Talk streaming. I did not get to thank the people that I really want to thank, and maybe I'll do a little bit on Friday during the live show. But why don't I just do that? I'll just save it for Friday during the live show. There's a lot of people I want to thank and I'm thankful for that are associated with this show. Okay, so use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open to what's possible. This is Robert Phoenix. You've been listening to Navigating the Astrological Matrix. I'll be back on Friday with Donna Faber and what's that? That was interesting. That was very interesting. I think it was Eric. I think he's still on the line there. There we go. We got him off. I'll be on with Donna Faber and Patrick Ivy, and we'll be talking about creativity, sovereignty, and all these things, these wonderful things that make us a human. Homo erectus. All right. I'll see you on Friday. Adios.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point, a variable